Good evening. I would like to welcome all of you who have attended this evening, and also to our MCAT audience. I'm Arlene Brown. I'm the president of the Missoula League of Women Voters. We are one of the co-sponsors of this forum for the candidates for the position of mayor. The other co-sponsors are the Missoula Aging Services, and Susan Kohler is the director there, and she's at the back of the room. The other agency co-sponsoring is the Missoula Senior Citizen Center, and Annette Sontag is the director, and she is here in the front row. I will explain to you the format. The candidates will be given time to introduce themselves and make a statement. They will be then asked, each candidate will be asked to answer questions that have been determined ahead of time. They'll be asked to answer in a randomly chosen order, taking turns. In addition to the questions which we have for them, there will also be questions from the audience. And as you came in, you were given a little card, and if you would like to submit a question, it should be submitted before 7:30. That will be the cutoff time for submission. And because often the questions are overlapping, we may slightly modify the way that the question is phrased. If you have a question that you want to submit, rather than getting up and going back, just raise your hand and one of the people who are picking up questions will come to you. The candidates here will be asked to answer questions, and they will be given a time limit for each of the statements, and we do have a timer, and so they will be given warning signs that their time is just about up, and then they will have to finish up. We're pretty strict with our timing on that. The moderator this evening is Annie Gard from KUFM. She's the current Children's Corner host. And then we'll just simply go ahead and begin. And if there's any questions, you can ask one of the people at the back of the room if you have additional questions. And so I will now introduce Annie Gard and let her be the moderator and introduce our candidates and begin.
Okay. All right. Well, can you hear me? All right. I would like to ask the candidates to introduce themselves, actually, by responding to this question. Since the mayor sets the tone for a city, what is your vision for Missoula? And we'll start with Clayton Floyd.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here tonight. Okay. Thank you. Does that sound better? Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this evening. My vision for Missoula is to try to maintain the quality of life that we've enjoyed and that attracted most of us here over the years. I feel like that has slipped or degraded some in the last 10 years, and I think we're at a point in the history of the city where we can either embrace the quality of life we've had and try to protect it, or we can watch it slowly slip away, and then we'll become like so many other larger cities, and we'll have all the problems to deal with that they have to deal with. I would prefer to try to embrace and protect the quality of life that we've enjoyed, and I think that's fully possible. I think there's a number of things that we can do, that I could do as mayor to affect that. Thank you.
Okay, we're ready. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to visit with you tonight. I'd also like to thank you, the very comfortable chairs. We don't always sit in places where it feels good to sit down and visit with people. I'm kind of a bricks and mortar person since I've been an architect for 34 years. I spent just about all of my lifetime in Missoula, and Missoula has been my passion. But I want to give you a little vision of kind of where I've come from. Just about 50 years ago, my dad moved a young family out into the Waupakia area. It was the first home in Waupakia. The nearest house was about a half mile away. There were no houses on the hillside, the South Hills at that point in time. So kind of contrast that to what you see right now in the development that we've had in the last 40 or 50 years. Missoula is going to continue to grow because of where it stands and sits in the scope in Montana and the services. So I guess I'd like to give you a little vision of, and I'll go through these as fast as I can, of what I see. Our neighborhoods will continue to be developed in the manner in which they've been developed to date, and we will protect the neighborhood character by neighborhood plans. We will see increased housing in both the mill site and the international development site, and we will see increased housing out in the Mullen Road area. Hopefully by this time in a few years, we will start to see the riverfront triangle develop down next to St. Patrick's Hospital, and we'll finally see the old Fox site developed and put to useful use. We will see bridges across the Bitterroot in the Miller Creek area to serve that, and we will see bridges across replacing the new Russell Street Bridge. So Missoula will continue to develop, and the challenge that the mayor has is to see that it develops in a way that doesn't degrade all of the services and the characters that we've seen. One of those will be on our hillsides where we will be weed-free, and we will see the flowers and the grasses returned that were so popular 20, 30 years ago. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Geoff Badenoch. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Geoff Badenoch, and my vision for Missoula is as a community that responds to change. This isn't the first generation that's had challenges in front of it. Every generation of Missoulians has. We have not been a community that has been free of challenges ever. And if you can look back in our history, you can see the challenges that we've had. We've had catastrophic floods that wiped out the Higgins Avenue Bridge in, I think it was 1908. We had a streetcar system that passed away into history, and it was something that helped our community develop. We developed dependence on the automobile that was very good for the growth of our community, but now is one of the things that challenges us most about the retention of our quality of life. So my vision of Missoula is a community that with each succeeding generation has to take these challenges along with the opportunities that come our way and employ them so that our community stays a place that we're proud to call home. One of the things that that guides my view of community and working in community is something that's called the Athenian Code, and some of you may be familiar with it. I saw it on the city council chambers in a small town in Illinois when I was there visiting. And one of the things that the Athenians used to pledge was that they would pass their city on to the next generation in better condition than they got it themselves. And that's my vision, and as mayor, I will work to make sure that we pass our community on to our children and our grandchildren in condition that's better than we found it. Thank you.
Good evening. From my experience on the City Council over the last 9 years, I've seen the way growth has been handled and has affected our sense of community and our quality of life. Missoula is becoming a major city in the Northern Rockies. So while growth may be inevitable, we have the ability to direct and design that growth to be compatible with our Missoula values. As mayor, I would bring a different approach to the challenges of growth. A vibrant and healthy Missoula requires a city government that is open about its strategies, decisions, and goals, involves residents and businesses in its decision-making process, is dedicated to preserving the integrity of our neighborhoods, is determined to provide housing solutions for all Missoulians by partnering with the nonprofit and private sectors, supports economic development that sustains Missoula's quality of life, and works to lessen traffic congestion and promote public transportation across Missoula. That's what I would hope to bring to the town. Thank you.
My name is John DeRazzi. I'm a third-generation Missoulian, and
Is your you have to turn your mic on.
okay, is that a little better? Okay. My name is John DeRazzi. I'm a third-generation Missoulian, and why I'm running for mayor and my vision for the future of Missoula is what I would call quality of life for everyone here. I believe that the government needs to earn the respect and trust again of the Missoula people, to let them know that we're on your side and to listen to you and to care about what you say and to not leave you in the dust on plans until it's too late to do anything about it. I believe those changes are necessary for this city to go in the right direction, the direction we want to go, and not where we've already been. So I'm here as one of you. I am not a politician. I don't know if I will turn into one. I'm hoping that doesn't necessarily have to happen. So I don't believe that a nonpartisan race should have politics involved in it. I think the mayor will have a large job in front of him. It will be one to gel city council to understand that we are all working for the community and the valley, that it's not little sections of Missoula and it's not this and that. It's the whole big picture that we have to look at now for the future. And that's where I plan to take this. I plan to make this a better place. I plan to make it as good a place as I grew up in. So there's a lot of work to be done, but I'm volunteering 4 years to do that. Thank you.
John, is your
Actually,
mic
John,
on?
it is, yes, thank
Okay.
you. John, it turns out if you've drunk the water, you are a politician. That's the way it works, yeah. And I sipped a long time ago, I'm afraid. So, my name's John Engen. Good evening. Thank you for having us this evening. My vision for Missoula is a place where folks of all ages, all incomes, all kinds can have a place that's safe and decent and, I hope, affordable to live. We need to build houses for folks, seniors, young families, folks with special needs, singles. That's something that is an absolute priority, and we need to work together to do that. I think that we need to continue to preserve and protect our open spaces. When we talk about quality of life, that is one of the tangible pieces that we can grab onto. We can look out and see our open space and know that we can enjoy it and our children can enjoy it for years to come because of our commitment. I believe in a Missoula that has rules and regulations that folks can understand and that we can enforce and that are simple and reasonable. I believe in a Missoula that's safe for all citizens. We need to continue to provide basic services as efficiently and as excellently as possible. This is my hometown. I love the place. I think everyone at this table loves the place, and I suspect you all do too. I think most Missoulians wake up most mornings pretty happy to live here, and I want to make sure that as I serve this community, that continues to be the case. Thank you.
Okay, now we asked you for your vision. Now we're going to ask for some more specific answers to questions. Here's the first one. Democratic government depends upon the informed and active participation of its citizens. The League of Women Voters supports a citizen's right to know and citizen participation in government decisions. If elected mayor, how would your administration honor these rights and promote an environment of inclusion for Missoula's city government? And we'll start with Jerry Ballas and go through Jeff Lewin.
Thank you for the superb.
Thank you for the superb question. Actually, we have a lot of procedures in places right now, I believe, that do at least guarantee citizen participation at most of our meetings. The problem that I've seen, that I see, is that our administration does not get out and visit with the community as much as he could, and I plan to change that. I've been to a number of neighborhood council meetings over the years that I've been on council, and quite honestly, I don't think I've ever seen the mayor at one. I know one of the senior housing chairman of the board is here tonight, and I don't think he would have missed this meeting because it's part of his organization that's putting it on. So I think the administration has to do the same thing. And when the administration does that and takes things like the budget out into the community, he will encourage more participation in the community, and he will give the citizens more opportunity to respond directly face to face. And that's the intent that I have as the mayor, is to make sure that I outreach into the citizens in the community and hear your voice instead of you coming down to have to come down to the city council all the time and talk about it.
Okay, Jeff?
Of course, we in Montana are blessed with a constitution that guarantees us as citizens the right to participate in our government. We're very lucky, and as mayor, I would make sure that right to participate would be honored. A few thoughts about communication first, the communication from the city. Right now, the city has a web page, and citizens can access the web page and read documents and agendas and minutes and so on. Oftentimes, those are very, very cumbersome. I think one of the things that would help citizens if there was a summary of information and issues so that people could grasp what was going on. One of the other things that we have at the city that's very, very important, and we're participating in it tonight, and that's the MCAT, the Missoula Community Access Television, and our new government channel, 11. I think that that's a good thing. Not everybody has cable television, has access to it, but maybe we could combine those two technologies and web stream over the video, or video stream over the web. But as far as communication and inclusion, one, we have to be clear about the process, let people know what it is. Second, be clear with people about what the issue at hand is. Third, insist that debate is open and supported by good argument and good evidence. And finally, when a mistake is made in process, admit it, correct it, and move on.
Ann Crowley.
I'm going to put these on. It is imperative that the city do its utmost to keep its citizens informed, honor their right to know, and cultivate citizen participation. I would begin by visiting all the neighborhood councils and neighborhood associations to find out how its members believe its relationship with its local government can be improved. I would initiate a mayoral monthly call-in program on the new Civic channel to expand citizens' awareness of what their local government is working on. And finally, I would strongly support the having MCAT televise coverage of our council committee meetings, because that is where the bulk of the work of the city council gets done. And people would get a better feel for the issues by witnessing council discussion.
Well, this brings me back to the last statement that I've said from the start of my campaign, that things are done in city government, and the people it affects are the last to know. They're always the last to know. I would have an absolute open door policy. If there's a plan for a subdivision in your neighborhood, you're not going to hear about it the day after it was approved. You're going to hear about it the day it hits the table in front of me. That's the day you're going to become involved with this. It's not going to be anything deceptive or anything that you feel you have no choice, again, to try to prevent or to participate. I have heard it too many times that when it comes time for public comment with our city government, that it is just It's just a matter of form. That the minds are already made up, the mindset is done, the plans are in effect. This is a formality. The only reason that we're here as a group is because it's a formality. This is the way the process works. They've made their mind up. What we say won't matter. That's another reason I'm sitting up here. That will come to an end. It has to be open communication from the very beginning. As your question says, what would you do to promote this? Not how it's done or what's been done. Obviously, you're looking for something better. Thank you.
Over the course of 4 years of serving as a city council person, I actually have had my mind changed occasionally by public comment. I think that our public comment periods are a bit cumbersome, a bit stilted, and not always as meaningful as they should be. And I think we might be able to find some ways to make that conversation a little more meaningful and maybe even a little less one-sided. I think there's opportunity there. As a person, as a politician, as a business person, I believe in openness and providing folks a chance to say what they need to say, to discuss things as openly and honestly as we can, and to try to come to some decisions. I think technology is one of the ways that we get there, but I think good old-fashioned footwork, as Jerry suggests, might be helpful as well.
Okay. Clayton Floyd.
Thank you. I think it's imperative if we're going to empower citizens to participate in their government again, that particularly as the mayor, you set the tone. There's three ways that I think that might be accomplished. I think regular mayoral addresses to cover the larger issues that are facing the city at a given time would be very helpful. First of all, it would provide an educational benefit. Some of these issues, when you listen to them in the course of council debate, are too difficult to try to follow as the debate unfolds. And I think if the mayor were to regularly provide addresses to the public would better understand why we take some of the actions we do. I would also encourage and go out and participate in town meetings. I think a lot of times the reason that these do not occur is the folks like the mayor or even council people tend to shy away from it is because they don't necessarily have all the answers, nor do they feel like they want to go out and just simply hear people complain. I don't think that's what most folks do when they come. They have a legitimate concern, and they want an answer as to why we're not addressing that concern. I think that needs to be noted and either explain why we haven't done something or what might be done, and then take action on it. Thank you.
Okay. Are we ready, Jeff? Yeah. The second question then is, what is your vision of the role the city should play in supporting the growing population of seniors in the city of Missoula? And we'll start with Geoff Badenoch and go to Luann, John Durrett.
I believe that the city should be informed by the individuals, the groups, and the agencies that are better able to determine the needs of the senior population in the city itself. Because it's probably not realistic that the city undertake the responsibility of being the lead agency to provide services and support for seniors. Having said that, I firmly believe that the city should be a willing partner to help those agencies achieve their mission. Among the challenges that seniors face is mobility, getting around. I know this from the fact that my own mother is 86 years old, and she's reaching the end of her driving years, and I think the people in Salem, Oregon are happy about that. But she's still very active and engaged in her church and volunteer groups, and she needs to be able to get around. And that's a very big challenge for her. And I think one of the things that the city needs to do is recognize the need for seniors to be able to get around safely. And I'll talk more about that later in a later question. Another thing that we can do is provide safe, convenient parks and trails for low-cost recreation that seniors can participate in. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, I think the city needs to be mindful of the burden that is placed on all citizens with the city's taxing policies. And one of the things that we hear quite frequently is the burden that's placed by general obligation bonds and other large capital projects. one of the things I think we can look at doing is the timing of those so that they don't all stack up.
Luann Crowley.
Okay. We cannot emphasize enough the impact that the aging of Missoula will have on all aspects of the community. A lot of the current focus is on the date when the baby boomers start to turn 60 in 2006. However, the impact is already being felt in the increased longevity of our citizens and the in-migration that occurs when seniors need to be closer to family, health care, and supportive living services. There are changing housing needs of both those with adequate retirement incomes, but also those seniors whose only source of income is Social Security, comprising mostly single people, particularly older women living alone because of divorce or widowhood. Many of these women constitute households whose present income is near subsistence level, insufficient to support even a modest standard of living. This population group is expected to grow faster than any other during the next 20 years. So the focus needs to be on quality, accessible health care, convenient transportation, and programs that allow seniors to stay in their homes. There's also the day-to-day stuff for seniors. A woman came up to Farmers Market and told me, I live downtown, but I'm afraid to walk because of the dogs off leash and the bicycles. Those are the kinds of things we need to address for seniors as well.
Well, I also have been taking care of my mother through cancer treatment all of this year here, and knock on wood, she was taken off chemo last week. But it opened my eyes to what the seniors do face, and the city, if possible, should be able to push a little pressure towards the medical community here in town, which is swelling, which I think is a vibrant business, basically, that you know, the business is always coming in their doors for them. So there needs to be a push, I believe, for them to not necessarily bring in so many specialists as they have done, and we have wonderful specialists here, but to look at primary caregivers and the general practitioners that the seniors have said that they're lacking, that they're people that won't be able to get in to just see a doctor. They cannot get a primary doctor, a primary care doctor. And the city needs to be able to put some pressure on organizations that benefit from the seniors, such as the medical community, and say, we need to do this. We need buses. We need transportation. We need volunteers. But what the city itself can do directly is the tax breaks for the elderly and the homeowners here. And that is something that's not impossible whatsoever. Thank you.
I think seniors face enormous challenges in our community, and you've heard about some of them this evening. Transportation, certainly. Access to quality health care, absolutely. But in some cases, it's about housing, and it's about having a square meal a day. It's about making your way through Medicare D and understanding how to take advantage of the benefits that you've earned over the years. We have tremendous partners in this community, Aging Services among them, who are at seniors' disposal and at caregivers' disposal and at children's disposal, spouses' disposal. Those assets are wonderful, and the city needs to continue to support those in the way that we have over the years. We also need to continue to support our partnership health program, which I think, again, helps seniors who may be slipping through the cracks, who may not be taking advantage of the benefits that are due them. Housing, I think, is critical for seniors, especially as this aging population swells. One of the things that is an important trend that we need to, I think, begin addressing is folks who want to age in place. And I don't think we need to build large complexes for seniors on the outskirts of town. I think we need to provide housing opportunity close to services, close to the core of our community, and close to families and all sorts of other folks.
I think the single largest thing that we could do to help seniors, particularly if they want to remain in their home, is to be cognizant of the tax burden that we place on them every time we do a budget. I don't think, frankly, we've given that serious enough consideration, because for a lot of the seniors who I've represented in Ward 6 with pleasure, they're marginally in their homes. When we talk about $100 or $25 here for an average $150,000 home, which of course there aren't too many $150,000 homes left in Missoula anymore, sooner or later it adds up to pretty serious money. And when you stack that up in a cumulative effect, not only with the tax, the property taxes, but then an occasional SID here or there for this or that, sooner or later you've actually added a pretty significant burden. I think the next thing we would like to do is to ensure that for those partners that partner with the city, like Aging Services, that we try to do the very best we can and prioritize them as a high priority for funding, so that they can continue to deliver the level of service or actually improve on the level of service that they're providing for the seniors in Missoula. Thank God they've got volunteers, because I think without volunteers their program wouldn't function. They couldn't afford to pay it. But they've got a great group of volunteers. We need to continue to do the best we can for agencies like Aging Services that are working.
The city needs to make sure that it works very closely with its partners that are providing senior health care, such as Aging Services. One of the things that we did that was controversial with some was giving Aging Services a grant so that they could improve their facilities to make their facilities a little more accommodating and economical. And the city needs to look at ways that it can help all of its service providers do the same thing. We've already heard that the senior population is probably the fastest growing segment of our community, and it will continue to be there. I'm right at that door, and many of you have passed it, and everybody sitting at this table is going to be right there in about 5 to 10 years. Providing housing, even though some people want to live in their houses, but providing housing for that number of people is going to be a big chore. And I talked about some of the areas where I think we need to have housing. And the reason, and we also need to make sure that senior housing is included in each and every one of those projects. And the main reason is because they're close to services, they're on transportation areas, and then there are areas where citizens, seniors can get to our trails and parks. The other area that we need to do is support our health services. It's one of the reasons why I supported the Safeway St. Pat's program, so that we can allow the hospital to grow to provide the services and the medical facilities that you're going to need. We want to keep that hospital in the center of town where it's close to everybody, and it's got to be as up to date as it possibly can be.
Okay. The third question is, the League promotes protection and wise use of natural resources for the public interest. What can the mayor of Missoula do to protect Missoula's valuable natural resources? We'll start with Ann Crowley.
Okay. Our natural resources are our bread and butter. They provide for the wonderful quality of life we all enjoy, and they provide also for our economic vitality. People want to be part of a healthy, prosperous, attractive community with clean air, clean water, and a beautiful visual environment. But let's not fool ourselves. We are going to have to commit to preserving our natural resources. Otherwise, we will foul our own nest. For example, in 1996, we had 1 million miles traveled per day. In less than a decade, you and I are now up to 1.7 miles per day traveled around this town. Think of the valley as a mixing bowl and our tires as the mixer, throwing up particulate into the air that we and our kids and our parents breathe. We can't depend on the federal government or the state to keep our air and water clean. We have to take responsibility to keep our standards high, because no one else will. What the mayor's office can do is work with our air and water quality boards to bring forward proposals to conserve and improve our natural resources.
Well, I see our natural resources as the city itself, the quality that we're going to try to reinstate and maintain the quality of life. Another thing with natural resources, and one of the only ones we have left is the real estate itself here. And to be able to protect and use wisely what is left and what is available. The issues that will be pushed upon this next administration are going to be enormous, especially if a lot of the things that have been said during this campaign are actually kept out in the limelight to be talked about in the future instead of just forgotten after an election. So I believe that you've got to protect, you've got to maintain a quality of, not only quality of life, but a sense of quality in everything around us, in the new building sites and such. There's got to be the maintenance of quality that everybody is proud of. And it cannot be in select areas. We don't want to segregate the city into different income brackets or anything. It's got to be done as a whole with the community, all of it. So it will be a task. I guarantee you that. It is not a simple solution. It's not an answer. It's not going to be horse and buggy again. There's people here. Thank you.
I'll talk about two natural resource issues that I think are extraordinarily important to our community and that I've been involved in. One is we live, work, breathe, play, drive on our water supply. Our aquifer is right below us. It's the only one we've got, and I think we need to protect that precious resource. And I think one of the ways we do that is through sanitary sewer. I've supported those projects in the ward I represent, the Rattlesnake Valley. I've supported those projects elsewhere. I certainly support the sanitary sewer in every subdivision we do in this valley. I think protecting our aquifer is of the utmost importance. Second piece of business that I'm very interested in is our open space. 10 years ago, the city of Missoula committed to purchasing open space in our valley, and we've done a phenomenal job. Thanks to you and the folks who had the foresight to support that open space bond, we've acquired lands that would have otherwise been used for development or who knows what else. Those lands are available to us again and to our children to use and to enjoy for years to come in all sorts of ways. I think we need to do that again. As John suggested, we don't have all that much real estate left that's available, and our hillsides are precious and our open space lands are precious. I think we need to buy them so that we can all enjoy them.
First and foremost, I think government itself needs to make sure it doesn't create any impacts that will degrade the environment. A couple of quick examples. Our street maintenance each year involves a product called Reclamite. It's a petroleum product. Some of you had the wonderful experience of dealing with Reclamite this summer. That petroleum product continues to leach out of the surface after we apply it. It then winds up in the storm drain. There's over 2,000 of those in the city, directly injecting those sheens into the aquifer. Something to think about. I think we could do better. Using a minimum sized vehicle to actually accomplish a given job that the city does in providing services. Because if you have the smallest possible engine, you're going to be emitting the least amount of pollution. Energy conservation measures in the facilities itself, not only will it save taxpayer dollars, but it'll also require less pollution in the environment because we'll be consuming less energy. The wastewater treatment plant itself, you know, we talk about the sewer as if it's the absolute cure-all, but if we're injecting nitrates, phosphates, and E. coli coliform into the Clark Fork, are we actually getting the job done? And water conservation, it in itself requires electric energy, which we could cut back on if we used less of it. Thank you.
I'm going to give John some credit because he mentioned an item that's been high on my priority, and that's protecting our sole source aquifer. And he and I both agree that the sewer system is very critical in supporting and protecting that, and we do promote the expansion of the sewer system. Management of open space is another issue. I've had some question about how much of it we should buy because we haven't always had the commitment to take care of it. And once you buy land, you have an obligation to take care of it. When I first got on council, I was very instrumental in trying to get a weed management plan proposed and implemented so that we can eliminate the weeds on the mountains and return the flowers and some of the natural grasses. And we're making great progress on that project, and we need to continue to do more. We need to look at some alternate fuels. The biodiesel is a great prospect for using some of our cooking oils that we waste and incorporating them with diesels and getting better gas mileage and facilities out of some of our diesel. I'd also like to see us look at some point in time to actually using a fuel cell and maybe getting some help from the government to convert a couple of our buses to fuel cells where we absolutely do no pollution into it. So Missoula needs to take the lead in some of those transportation issues, and as mayor, I'm going to work to see if we can get that done.
When you're the last one to answer a question, all the good comments have been taken. Like everyone here, I'm very sensitive to the fact that we do have a sole source aquifer, and that if we don't protect it, we're going to be in serious trouble, and any solution after fouling the sole source aquifer is going to be very expensive to deal with. Therefore, we have to be, the city has to be a good partner with the Water Quality District, the Missoula City County Health Department, and as well a good partner with Mountain Water, our local private water company, because we're all in this together as far as the water is concerned. As mayor, one of the things I would try to do is develop information that everyone in the community could agree on as to both the threats to our water quality as well as the techniques to protect it. I've heard a lot of discord at council about how best to protect it, and there seems to be our scientists versus their scientists disputes, and I think we need to settle that issue. With respect to our wastewater treatment, we simply have to do better. We owe it to the communities who are downstream from us to discharge the cleanest water we can. To do that will be neither cheap nor easy, but it's the right thing to do. We have to do that. And our air quality has improved. It's not going to improve to where it needs to be until we finally get a handle on the links between transportation and growth management.
Okay. All right. What can the city do to increase public transportation and to help make public transportation more user-friendly to seniors and others who are reluctant to use the system? So we start with John Durazi.
Well, obviously, the simple thing would be to say more money, more buses. Well, what you need to do is probably try to budget that. You really probably should look at things that get money spent on them as low priority compared to top priority. And I believe, I've been listening and things, I believe there is a program with federal money in it if we would try to switch our bus system to electric buses, which is very doable now at this time in the world, in the automotive industry, that would be zero pollution also. And if we could get federal money to help build a larger bus system, then we can dedicate some directly to the seniors. And as the other means, I have people tell me when they're waiting for a bus or if they miss a bus somewhere in town that it's an hour before another one comes along. So obviously, the city needs to revamp what they do have for a bus system, maybe make priority routes there also. But to make it so that if you miss one, you don't wait an hour. There is no convenience in waiting and waiting and waiting. So that needs to be, like I say, it needs to be moved up on the list of priority. And I think they can provide special transportation for the seniors directly. And while we're talking about convenience and such, that the Champion Mill site would be a wonderful place for some seniors to live right across the river from the hospital.
So here's the good news. Our community is still small enough that if you're a senior and you require specialized transportation or even simple transportation, we have lots of programs in place that offer you opportunities to get where you need to go. That's the good news. The bad news is we're small enough that we don't have enough souls to have a bus run at every convenient stop in every place in town as often as we'd like. That's the balance we have to strike, and I think our transportation district attempts to do that. In fact, we did a study, I believe last year or the year before, retooled some of our bus lines to try to make them more convenient, try to make them more available to folks who want to get from point A to point B. It's tough though, and our cars are pretty convenient, and I think as gas prices continue to rise, we may see some more ridership on public transportation. But as long as it's still cheaper and more convenient, I think, to get in our cars or on our bikes or walk, public transportation may not be everybody's first choice.
I think Steve Earle does a terrific job trying to get the right combination of routes available to Missoulians so that they can maximize the use of the mountain line. It's almost an impossible task, however, with the number of buses and drivers that we have to operate within the system. Not every bus stop has an hour wait before the next bus comes along, but when you get farther out from the core, certainly the time does lengthen between buses. As far as trying to make it more attractive and more accessible to seniors, it's simply a matter of we need more buses. When you try to schedule and you have to schedule 2 weeks ahead of time just to be able to get from your home to Western Montana Clinic, that's not very convenient. And so therefore a lot of folks avoid it because it's not convenient. I think we could probably do a better job of the appointment system for folks who would like to use it, particularly seniors where we have dedicated transportation to them. And last but not least, I think for some folks, it's a little daunting when they look at the map and try to figure out which route they need to get from point A to point B. So I think somehow if we could make it color-coded or something a little simpler, like when Dell sent me my computer, it would work better. Thank you.
This question came up when we were down at the Senior Citizen Center, so I kind of took some time and asked around, and I was challenged a little bit in my remarks down there. We've actually got a pretty good core system of people that help seniors find rides to wherever they need to go. And the information that I've been given to people that use that, they've actually found it pretty convenient, as long as you know how to use it. So part of the problem, I think, is communication and helping people understand how the system works and connecting to it. The bigger problem that I see, though, is we keep talking about what we have now. What are we going to have to do in the future? We talked about how our senior population is going to grow. So we've got to find ways to serve an ever-increasing senior population. I guess my thought is that is going back to the housing. If we can develop some good senior housing in those areas like the mill sites that are close to the services, we can consolidate our transportation needs for the citizens and increase its efficiency, and then maybe we can help more people. As we develop housing, though, for seniors, I think we need to take a look at the university's approach to housing students. And they do a very proactive design approach and really try to find out what do seniors need and really want in housing to make them attractive so that you want to go and live there and not just throw up a box. So part of our challenge with senior housing is to build things that you really want to go to and move to.
Many factors impede the use of public transportation. First, of course, is the level of service and convenience. And how do we get beyond that is we have to grow the system. How do we grow the system? Well, I think one of the policies that we should look at in the city is that when we have a subdivision or an area of town annexed into the city, if it's not already part of the urban transportation district, it should become part of the district. Those new annexed areas should be part of the system of public transportation. And I say that not as somebody who's up here talking about it. I'm a bus rider. I try to ride the bus at least 3-4 times a week. I don't just talk the talk, I ride the bus. One of the things that we also see as an impediment to bus riding is the cost. It costs $25 a month to have a bus pass. That's far less than it costs to own and operate an automobile. That kind of information needs to be set out there. One of the other things, and to me it's the key issue, is we simply have to get past the stigma that the bus is for those other people. It's for all of us. The buses are clean, they're comfortable, and if you use your brains and you plan a little bit, the schedules are fine. Do you have to walk to get to a bus stop? Yeah, you might have to walk 4 or 5 blocks, but it's not undoable. I mean, it's not impossible. And I think a program that we could have is, that I thought of, it's called Bus Buddies. I'd be willing to take any one of you on the bus to
late.
teach you how to do it.
Luann.
All right. As any business person would tell you, the key to success is service. And that's what people are looking for from our bus system. They want faster turnaround, more stops, shelters, and park and rides. This desire and demand for a good transit system is becoming stronger and louder. It's time for the city and the county to step up to the plate. We need leadership that will commit to better service, improvements, and amenities by providing the necessary matching funds to Mountain Line when they go out for federal dollars. 2 things we could do to make the system more user-friendly would be to accelerate the completion of our sidewalk system so seniors, kids, and all of us can get to the bus easier, especially in the winter, as you know, instead of going out into the street with the ice. The second thing is, again, at the senior center, we mentioned the van pool program. It only operates 1 day a week. What they need is volunteer drivers, and then they could get on schedule for 5 days a week. I also think that we should investigate using our CDBG money for low and moderate income citizens so that they can have bus passes too.
Here's the next question. What policies could the city adopt to ensure that development does not price out our vulnerable citizens like seniors or low-income families? And we'll start with John Engen.
Well, fortunately, we've taken some steps already, and I think we can continue to take some of those steps. One of the steps is we've developed and implemented impact fees within the city of Missoula. That means every new house that's built, and in some cases remodeling projects, are subject to impact fees. Commercial building projects are subject to impact fees. And what those fees are they're designed to help pay us all back for the money we've put in to our fire stations, our police stations, our vehicles, our parks, all that stuff that makes a city work, all that stuff that we've paid for over the years. Impact fees help offset those expenses, and that means that we don't have to charge you as much in terms of sheer tax dollars. That's one piece of business that we try to engage in. The other, I think, is the more housing there is, the healthier our market is. We hope we can at least slow the acceleration of inflation in the housing market, and if we don't force property values through the roof, that helps temper the tax burden for folks. It's a difficult situation, but we need to keep plugging away and chipping away at it.
I think a couple of things that we could do that would definitely help, because I think there's kind of a myth out there that when we adopted infill tools 6 years ago that it was going to provide a panacea of affordability. That hasn't occurred. By and large, vulnerable citizens within this community are as at risk today or more so than they were when we adopted those tools. One of the things that we might do would be to provide larger scale projects, because I think the larger the scale project, there's certain economies that can be realized in building that project. We would want to make sure that if it were designed for seniors in particular rather than families, one of the things I've heard going door to door is we need to keep it on one floor, because it's really difficult when you start getting a little bit older to negotiate stairs when you have to do the laundry or when you're going to the kitchen. So I think there's a lot of design criteria we could impose on development for seniors in particular, and if it were for families, I think design criteria that we need to have there too, because if it's going to be on a larger scale, it still needs the amenities that would make it home, whether it be a playground for the kids, the walking paths, whatever, in close proximity to the actual housing itself. Thank you.
This is probably one of the most difficult, this is one of the most difficult questions to answer, because everything I've heard to date, that, you know, there's always a cause and effect, and if you do one thing, it affects something else. We talked about impact fees, but, you know, impact fees increase the cost of housing for everybody, and once it increases it for one person, it increases it for somebody else. So the impact fees are not necessarily the panacea of it. I think you have to take a whole number of approaches to it. And one that's bothered me the most is how we've been doing our annexations. And I want to see us do annexations that are close to the city, adjacent to the city, so that those public service agents that we have to pay for, the police and fire, have more efficient use of their people. If we annex close to the city, the police and fire don't have to go out so far, and they don't enclose quite as much an impact on development. If we do island annexations like Phantom Hills, where they have to run out 5 or 6 miles, they not only take away from services that they can provide to you, but it costs us more to send them out there. It's not very efficient, so I think we need to be more efficient in doing that. We also need to look at some of our development regulations and make sure that those regulations that we pass that help us develop the housing for the seniors are not over-imposing, such as requiring more parking than a senior citizen housing needs. So we need to take a look at a number of things to reduce the cost of development at the same time.
Greater density, particularly for senior housing projects, has got to be part of the solution, simply as was said earlier, to take advantage of the economies of scale. Now, density, unfortunately, has become a dirty word in a lot of discussions about community development here. But I know it can be done well, and I know we can create livable communities that are dense, particularly for seniors. I have more than a few friends that live in the Clark Fork Manor, Riverside, and they love living there. And yet it's 10 stories high on a very small, relatively small footprint. That's density being taken advantage of. Another thing that we have to do and have to have as part of the mix, not only for senior housing, but for all of our housing, is a strategy to redevelop existing developed lands in our community. And this is my background in redevelopment. There are places in our community, large tracts of land, that are obsolete or blighted and need to be reused and need to be redeveloped. They are already served by city services. The police and fire that was mentioned earlier already go by there. The sewer is already there. The streets are there. We need to form partnerships with redevelopment, with private sector redevelopment, with the agencies like the Missoula Housing Authority, Homeward, and other community development corporations whose job it is to develop this kind of housing. It can be done, and the city should be a partner in that.
The community has said again and again that home ownership and affordable housing for the citizens with low and moderate income are values that we hold dear. Now is the time that we as a community make the commitment to have perpetually affordable housing for both young and old alike. Housing that is affordable generation after generation. If a hardworking family is lucky enough to get into a house these days, often just paying the mortgage takes up so much of their income that they have to sacrifice other important things, like college for their kids. Our nonprofits, housing groups, are doing a great job of taking on this daunting task in the face of speculation and outside investment. But it's time that the public and private sectors become involved to create generational accessibility to affordable housing. We need to look at having an affordable component in all our new development. We need to look at land trusts, co-op housing, so that there will be housing there for the kids born today. I will sit down with our housing specialists, builders, and bankers to create a model for this. Other cities have programs that do this, and we can too.
It's going to be tough in 90 seconds. Well, other counties and cities in Montana have got a tax cut for the seniors and their property taxes. It's a 50% tax cut, and it depends on your income. I hope that that will be available here to all. And I also hope that if you are in the income brackets that doesn't allow you a large, comfortable home and things, that you're not going to be part of the redevelopment where you won't be able to afford to stay the next week when they decide that your place would look better in a different complex manner, and that what you could afford does not become affordable anymore. So there's also the property tax freeze that was put into place. I'm thinking it was about 16 years ago, and we saw what that did for us, that property taxes increase with a property tax freeze. So that policy is not one that can be put into place effectively because it wasn't effective the first time. So the program for affordable housing for seniors, again, is going to be budget. It's going to be take care of it. But don't ignore it until it's too late. I mean, it's not just an issue because we're here tonight. This is going to be an issue next January, and it's going to be one that's going to be on top of the list. Thank you.
All right. So do we have time for one more of these kind of questions before we start the audience ones? Start the audience questions. All right. Okay. In view of the recent disaster in the Gulf of Mexico, what similar natural or man-made events do you envision as possible for Missoula, and how would you prepare for it? And we're starting back at the beginning with Clayton Floyd.
It's ironic that this question came up because as I was sitting there watching this tragedy unfold on TV, my first thought was how ill-prepared we were here in Missoula as well. I'm not sure how many of you were in Montana at the time. A major earthquake happened in Yellowstone that formed Hebgen Lake, but it didn't take weeks or months for Hebgen Lake to form. It took days. And with the volume of water that flows down the Clark Fork in a major earthquake, if it happened in Hellgate Canyon or if it happened below us, I think we could have a serious problem. And I don't think we're prepared in any way, shape, or form at this point in time to be able to deal with that any more or any better than the folks in Louisiana have dealt with that tragedy.
I would agree probably the earthquake is the biggest natural disaster that we would have to encounter, although I can think of a couple others that are just as likely, and one is fire. And we've seen a fire almost go through the town of Alberton pretty darn quickly. How we prepare for that, I actually sit on the city representation on our emergency planning committee that the police department and the fire department have. And there's actually a pretty active group that do quite a bit of planning for emergency services and doing training. Whether we incorporate everything and take in all contingencies is probably a matter of funding, and we don't have enough funds to do all that. But I know the police and fire departments are working on it. I think we need to continue to work on that and to support that activity. But it also means that they need more funds, and most of those funds are going to come from the federal government. We need to probably be prepared to go back and lobby the federal government to get our fair share of funds for emergency disaster.
And considering this question in light of what happened with Hurricane Katrina in the Gulf, 4 things came to mind. One would be a flood event that would be the result of the Milltown Dam failing prior to its removal, an earthquake, as was mentioned by others. We were all here when Mount St. Helens blew, and that caused a little bit of disruption in our community. And there's another one that people talk about from time to time, geologists primarily, and that would be a very wet winter followed by a very wet spring that might result in clay lenses in the South Hills starting to slide and causing the houses there to slide. And I think about the catastrophe that would result there with utilities, water lines, sewer lines rupturing, houses cascading down the hill into the houses below, and that would be a huge problem for us to deal with. It could result in fire, it could result in flooding, it could result in contamination of the water and so on. We do have good emergency preparedness in this community. Back in the days when FEMA was the hero, they offered a lot of training and a lot of preparedness for communities. As a matter of fact, I once took a training to be an information officer at emergency incidents because they needed people who are willing to do that. We can do it, we have to do it, and I think what we're going to be relying on here is not only our professional uniformed services, but each other.
People have mentioned all the natural disasters. My mind immediately went to the Alberton spill. I also have served on the local emergency planning committee. For some reason, I'm attracted to the idea of planning for disaster. Not sure why. But anyway, it's true that our fire and police and health department, they all have plans. They all train. And my question to them always was, what about the citizens? What's their plan? How do they know where to go? What route to take out of town? Do they have a stockpile of water and food? I think it's imperative that we start to think in terms of how well is our community, our citizens, how well are they prepared to handle a disaster? We can't just leave it to the fire and police. I would like to have a public awareness campaign about how much water you should have on hand, what kind of emergency medical supplies, things like that. I think it's incumbent on all of us to be prepared and have our own plan, and the city can help do that.
Well, I don't know if anybody could ever prepare for the devastation that they saw down in the Gulf. But right now, if we've had all these planning boards and things, I don't think anybody at Miller Creek would like to hear their other way out of there besides coming down to 93 Highway. I don't think they have another way out of Miller Creek. If anything were to happen to Highway 93 south of town here, there's no way out of the Bitterroot Valley. We are in a valley. I mean, that's bottom line. So if you're going to consider evacuation plans, emergency evacuation plans and things, hopefully there would be enough warning, as there should have been for some in the Katrina disaster area. There was warning so that people could at least try to migrate to I-90 and get east or west out of here. But as it is right now, what we've seen, if the pre-destruction of Milltown Dam before its removal would be an issue for flood, I'm afraid that would be an issue for flood after its removal anyways, anytime. So whatever may come, I don't know if the planning has been appropriate. I'm not part of that. There's people here that says they have been. But like I say, the people up Miller Creek are very concerned of how they would ever get out even from fire below them. They don't know how they would get out of there. So anyways, good question.
I think we are fortunate to have a number of agencies cooperating and making plans for disasters, natural and otherwise. And as John suggests, I'm not sure that we could necessarily be prepared for every contingency. I do have a hunch that in the wake of what happened in the Gulf, that we will suddenly see FEMA become a much different and more responsive agency, and perhaps, as Jerry suggests, we'll have some opportunity to take advantage of FEMA once again and apply some of those funds and make sure that our preparedness is in line with what it should be.
Okay. The next audience question is, Mayor Kadis has led an effort to create a private nonprofit corporation, Montana Public Power Incorporated, to purchase Northwestern Energy. Do you favor Missoula's participation in this corporation? Why or why not? And what should be the role of the mayor and city council should the purchase occur? And we'll start with Jerry Ballas.
Well, that's a huge question. And I'll be honest, when this came up before City Council, I didn't support it. And there were a number of reasons why I didn't support it. One, I thought for $100,000 in Missoula, there were a lot better ways, and we had many more high priorities to spend our time and effort on. And I wish the mayor would have put as much effort into maybe dealing with some of our growth issues as he have in the public power participation. The other one was that in buying Northwest, we're only looking at one entity in the power equation. We're not looking at the power supply, and that's the entity that actually creates the most cost. So I didn't think we were getting the best bang for our buck. I also felt that we did have a public commission that is studying rates, and they were working very hard to develop methods to ring fence Montana Power and to make sure that their attention was devoted to supplying power and not doing other things. So I still have some questions. I think that's a very complicated thing. I wish we hadn't given the mayor a blank check to write whatever kind of monies he may need to facilitate this, because it may come back to bite all of us if we have to dig deeper into our budget.
Some of you may know last year I ran for the Public Service Commission in Montana, and this issue was one that I followed very, very closely. The history of the last 10 years in energy in Montana is one of hasty missteps. The legislature was hasty to deregulate the power company. The power company was hasty to divest itself of the power generation facilities. Montana Power was hasty to try to become a dot-com company. Northwest Corporation was hasty to get into businesses that were outside of its core competency. And one step after another led to disaster. The problem that I see with what's being proposed is that there is no model for this kind of creature anticipated anywhere in the state law. The Public Service Commission will have a very difficult time regulating it. They're used to regulating stockholder, private-owned, profit-based organizations, and their club is the ability to make sure that the companies, if they want to earn a profit, behave in the public interest. This thing doesn't make a profit. There's no way to regulate it effectively. My biggest problem with it now is that as this is starting to be examined, the mayor has admitted that there are pieces of this puzzle that haven't been thought through yet. Folks, this is a $2 billion proposal, and the pieces aren't in place. I think we're in big trouble if we go ahead with this.
I think we all want stable and reliable energy. That's the goal here, to have that piece, at least one piece that we have control over. Now, when the mayor brought it forward, he brought forward an agreement. And we had no ability to change that agreement. We had no say. I'm talking about the council. It was either up or down. And at that point, even though I support the idea of buying the electricity, I did not vote to approve that particular agreement. PSC only regulates private utilities. So we have to wait until the legislature acts and creates a way for this piece of this entity to be regulated. Until then, they're on their own. We have no say right now over the structure, how it will be set up. And we are the captive ratepayer. So in other words, there are a lot of pluses and there are a lot of minuses. The die has been cast. We're on the road, and we'll see what these venture capitalists, how they decide our fate.
I really hope it's not a done deal. My answer to that question is absolutely no. We should not be involved with that in a multi-city thing. I have it from a reliable source that the company is not worth its debt, let alone another $1.4 billion besides its debt. The bureaucracy level that will be accomplished by this Who knows? Who knows what that's really gonna cost bottom line? They've just received a 28% increase without any comment from PSC, Northwestern Energy has. You gotta read about it or hear about it there just last week that, you know, your little power bill this winter is probably gonna go up. Just a bit, you know, no pinch, you know, you don't get to eat for a week during that month, but don't worry about it. You'll be fine. So, anyways, like I say, I have very reliable source that this company is not worth anywhere near the 2.2 billion. It's a buyout, it's a sellout. It's creating some people some jobs that probably won't have any after January 1st.
I think it's important to keep in mind what the goal is here, and that is to continue to provide Montanans with a stable, affordable energy source. And I think that's what not only the city of Missoula, but a number of communities in Montana try to engage in. And there are a number of models throughout the United States for municipalities to own electrical companies. That's a utility that's not uncommonly owned among municipalities. All those things being said, I'm certainly not an expert, but these folks have not gone forward blindly. They've engaged experts and consultants to help them through the process in hopes that if this is a viable opportunity for the state of Montana to pursue, we should pursue it so that we can have stable, affordable electricity for all of us. I think it's worth a shot. Whether we're successful, I don't know.
Well, I don't agree that we've hired the folks that are going to provide the plan after the purchase occurs. We've hired folks to talk us through the purchase process. And when this issue came before council, I was very much opposed to it because Mayor Cadiz held himself out as an expert in this area. I asked three basic questions. What was the maintenance budget of Northwestern Energy last year? What were the operating revenues that would cover and create that maintenance budget? And if the system were to totally fail, what would it cost to build this system from the ground up once again? Didn't get one single answer. But the one thing that I would point out quickly here is the answer for the first question was $18 million. Industry experts estimate that that budget should have been closer to $40 million. That's occurred in the last 5 years, 3 of which Northwestern Energy's owned it, and the last 2 years of Montana Power owned it. That basically says this system's been under-maintained. It's like buying a Cadillac knowing the transmission's about to fail. $2 billion is what we're talking about financing here, 100% debt financing. That's an amazing offer to put out there. And if you talk to the folks in South Dakota, they're not particularly sold on public utilities there.
Okay. All right. Comes another one. Ready, set, go. Sally Mullen was hired to evaluate the performance of the Office of Planning and Grants and reported that the city ordinances are horrible. What will you do to act upon her directive that codes and regulations need to be rewritten? And we start with Geoff Badenoch.
I was one of the people that Sally interviewed in the course of writing her report, and it was at a time when I was considering this run for mayor. And one of the things that helped me understand and helped me distill is that the problem is that the council over the last several years has not done good policy work. There's been a lot of policy work. There's been a lot of studies. There's been a lot of community-based sessions where we've talked and talked and talked, and we've done studies and we've written things. But the good, hard policy work to get us regulations that are enforceable, that are fair, that are predictable, seem to be missing. And I think that's a problem. One of the things that I bring to with my candidacy is I have a master's degree in public administration. I know how to do policy work. And as mayor, I would try to help the council do better policy work by focusing on key issues and helping them find areas of agreement rather than areas of opposition, to help them work through the issues so that we can get the regulations, the ordinances that we need.
You know, when you work with people and they're working through an ordinance or we're trying to figure out a code, you get to see firsthand how the language kind of runs back on itself oftentimes. And you understand why people are frustrated by the codes that we have on the books. Now, Sally said we need to rewrite, and that's a tremendous job. We tried rewriting the codes and the ordinances, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 years ago. It didn't involve the citizenry. Someone was hired to do it and presented it to the public, and the public resoundingly said, no thanks. So that was put on the shelf. And each time we have to add another layer of code, we try to make it clear, but I'll tell you, once you get into it, oftentimes you don't take the opportunity to stand back and try to understand how it would be for somebody else, a citizen coming to the desk at the planning office to read this. So it's a task that we have to take on. People have suggested that we hire somebody from outside. I think it's something that the council and the county, since we are both now in charge of the planning office, we will have to take on that task and figure out the best way to do it.
I think this is part of the reason I'm running. I spell it C-H-A-N-G-E, and that's what I stand for. Simplicity, rules and regulations that are meant for everyone, not specific groups or anything. No politics, no favoritism. Simple rules and regulations that everybody plays by. If you don't meet the requirements, you don't get to play. And also, the planning and the hiring of groups from Timbuktu, Boulder, wherever you're going to bring them in from, for their opinions of Missoula, it infuriates me. I cannot control myself so much to hear about another study and how much money that one cost us. If we don't have any brains left in this town to figure out a few things on our own, by whatever committees you can put together with local people, people that might actually walk, ride, or drive in our streets, that's where you might get some relative ideas that are good ideas for Missoula. And that's who I would ask to help me as mayor, is the local people. You bring it forward. Let's see if we can work it out. Thank you.
I've served as chairman of our land use planning committee on city council, and one of the interesting things that I've noticed is that we don't agree on a lot as a community, and we certainly don't always agree on everything as a council. But one of the things that we seem to agree on is that Sally Mullen wrote a pretty good report, and that people seem to like Sally and people seem to trust Sally. So I reckon I'd hire Sally to help us work through some of these regulatory questions. I think she's a trusted person. I don't know if she'd take the job, but I think I'd offer it.
I think the only thing everyone agreed on out of Sally Mullen's report is that PPC, the Policy Planning Committee, was a big source of the problem, and that it needed to go away. In the new agreement that we're yet to vote on, that will occur. But I don't think that's hardly going to solve the problem. The problem is if in fact we enabled poor ordinance or poor policy, it was because we received poor advice from staff. And I think if you can't enact good policy in a vacuum. I think one of the unfortunate things that's happened is there's such a mountain of issues that come before council on a regular basis. You have to trust staff. But at points, we ought to be stopping and asking the questions, the hard questions. Are the policies we implement getting us where we want to go? And when we recognize that's not the case, we really need to be taking corrective action. And I think we've totally failed to do that in this instance. Now, some of you will read on Saturday a question that the Missoulian asked when they were interviewing. What was your first official act as mayor? And my first official act would be to terminate this agreement and start over with a new department for the city, because frankly, I think we can do better. Thank you.
You know, I'm one of the few people up here that have to work with some of these ordinances on a daily basis, and I find them as confusing as anybody else, even though I helped write some of them. And going through that process of writing them, I think I've seen us spend months trying to rewrite one ordinances and seeing council people that try to wordsmith every paragraph that they go through. So Sally was right that the ordinances are a mess, but she really failed to understand the enormity of the problem and how you go about trying to rewrite something that people have been using for a long, long time, and that are ingrained in everything that we do. You know, I hate to see the challenge of trying to rewrite the zoning ordinances and the outcry that we would get from citizens if you start to try to change their zoning. We've seen that done several times by directors of OPG in the past when it was the planning department, and most of those directors are gone. They didn't last very much once they proposed something. So one of the things that I think the mayor needs is a professional ordinance writer that would really understand how to write an ordinance and make it clear. And then the mayor needs to lobby the council to stop nitpicking the ordinances that are written, and to listen to the professional writers that we have. So maybe Sally could be one of those persons that could help us rewrite it.
Okay, here's the next one. How will you, as mayor, support small businesses? What can city departments do to better help small businesses? We'll start with Ann Crowley.
Well, we have an organization in town called the Missoula Area Economic Development Corporation. They have a kind of a twofold type of job. One is to attract new businesses, examine the folks that might want to come to town, and their other job is to enhance the businesses that are already here and help them grow. Small business is about, across Montana, is about 95% of the business that we have in this state. So small businesses are the backbone of our state. I'm sure we all know a small business owner and how they give so much of their time to their business. I know one, and she runs the Body Basics. She works 7 days a week in her head, as many of you probably do if you own a small business. I think the important thing is to support them through our own awareness of how they contribute to this community. Support them by going to their business, buying their products, and promoting them to our friends.
I know a small businessman. But you got to understand also that Carl Tyler Chevrolet, the Missoulian, these are small businesses also. They're not large. I mean, the Missoulian itself is part of a large organization, but when it's local here and it's in our town, that it's not that large. Small business doesn't mean 2 or 3 people. It means a lot of the businesses that are in Missoula. One of the things that upsets a lot of the small businesses right now is what has happened over the sign ordinance, that they say they were picked on unfairly. They weren't able to properly display what their business was with the sign ordinance, but they all put themselves in one group and they lived with it until it was altered. So now we can go back to the drawing board, perhaps with a new sign ordinance that will regulate per business, not just a general overlay, and give them an opportunity to display what their business is, where it's necessary and such. Those are things the downtown businesses were just given a $200 lump tax per year for being in business downtown. That seems like it's awful nice to somebody that's trying to stay independent or small or whatever, that you just got charged more because you're downtown. You know, I mean, there needs to be a fairness here. You have to look at it all in fairness.
John's talking about a business improvement district downtown that I think a lot of the folks downtown were very interested in supporting, because it provides opportunity for downtown to be marketed, to be clean, to be safe. and to make improvements that are good for all businesses and residents as well. I'm part owner and operator of a couple of small businesses downtown. And I often think, what is it that government does that makes it easy or difficult for me to do business? I'll tell you the things that I think make it easy. When I have a safe place to go to work, and when my customers are safe when they're coming to visit me at my business, that's what government does for me. We have great police and fire protection. We feel safe and secure where we are. We have good streets, we have good sidewalks, we have all the public stuff that makes it easy for us to do business and for customers to do business with us. We do all of those things, I think, as a matter of course, and I think those are important. The other things we can do, I think, are to engage, as Lou Ann suggested, with partners like the Missoula Area Economic Development Corporation, the Montana Community Development Corporation. These are folks who are actively engaged and know what they're doing in terms of economic development. Sometimes when it comes to small business and government, that notion of I'm from the government and I'm here to help comes into play, and it scares people off. So when we partner with folks who know what they're doing, I think we're better off.
I'm from the government and I'm here to help. It's an interesting phrase. I think probably the most exacerbating experience that most small businessmen have in Missoula is trying to deal with the city over this license fee or that requirement for doing my remodeling or the landscaping or parking that you asked me to do, or how do I actually get a sign hung on my building. I think unfortunately the way a lot of these ordinances have wound up being written is they're complicated way beyond belief, and they really are not getting us to where we want to go. So I would suggest, as tough as it may be, I think we need to endeavor to go back and simplify where the ordinance is very clear. It's black or it's white. When we get into this subjective gray area, all kinds of things start to happen. And I hate to pick on him, but I see Jerry Murphy here, and I know Max came across the alley one day and he says, you know, geez, Clayton, you know what they want me to do if I have to finish up my parking lot and landscaping out here? Well, it was going to come out within 10 feet of a power pole that happened to be in the alley. Now, that was still on Max's property, but the power pole happened to be encroaching on the alley. Well, someone didn't get off their duff, go out there and check the alley way back when they let the power company put the power poles in, but we're going to complicate it by putting landscaping within 10 feet of it, so maybe a fire truck has a hard time getting down there. It just doesn't make sense. Thank you.
Well, with all due respect to John DeRazzi, I also have been a small businessman. I've been a small businessman for 34 years through ups and downs and through a lot of different regulations and economic impacts. I also have been volunteering the last 6 years to try to work on the council to try to make things better and to try to bring a small business perspective to the council, and I've tried to do that. One of the frustrations I have is I know city staff works very hard to do the things that they need to do, but they don't understand some of the needs of small business and the help that small business needs. I can't go out and hire a special person like maybe one of the bigger auto companies could to go down and specifically walk through a sign ordinance. I end up doing that myself for my customers. What I found from city staff is they tend to take their big projects like Walmart and they go through the landscaping things and they make all the things that they can make Walmart do to put in all the landscaping because Walmart can pay for it. They think the small businessman can do exactly the same thing. And they just don't understand the challenges of the small business and the fact that you got to go down to the bank to borrow that money and figure out how to pay it off. My business experience as small businesses and the mayor is going to walk in that door with me, and I intend to carry it through in just about everything that I do.
I'm the person sitting in front of you that had the privilege and the pleasure of walking into small businesses and saying, in all sincerity and all truth, hi, I am from the government and I'm here to help you. I have a career of building partnerships with small businesses, and I think people who are in small business, you know, sometimes grumpy though they may be and mad at the city, I think they're heroes. Anybody who would take that on is taking on just a huge challenge with questionable rewards. But the city can support small business in a variety of ways. By being a good community, by providing good infrastructure, by providing good police and fire service, and consistent, predictable regulations. That's all business wants. They don't want a special deal. They don't want a special provision for them. They just want to be able to compete on a fair, consistent basis for their share of business. We have a lot of other ways that we can help support small business. Two of them are in the 2nd Urban Renewal District along Russell Street and on the 3rd Urban Renewal District along Brooks. There's a lot of development and redevelopment that's going to occur there. And there's a lot of small businesses in both those places that are going to benefit from the help that they're going to get from the redevelopment agency that has a city and a mayor that's going to support that. Me.
Okay. The city council sometimes uses its flexibility or discretion to act in ways that appear contrary. For example, what is okay for a core neighborhood is not okay in an established neighborhood. How will you, as mayor, react when the council takes action contrary to policy or law? And the answers start with John Durazi.
Well, as mayor, I stated earlier, it would be one of my strong hopes would be to gel council to make it a whole unit for the city itself. I am not familiar with being on city council. I'm not familiar with what does go on behind the closed doors when they are in committee and why something doesn't come out of that door that's good when they come out. It baffles me. I'm befuddled, but I think that as mayor, that you have to keep council in focus. You have to keep council aware of what the rules and regulations are. I mean, they're the ones that set the policy. They want to change it for different neighborhoods and such. I've stated before that it is going to have to be majority of property owners in that neighborhood for any kind of change to do it. I mean, I will not object to majority rules, but it's going to be majority rules. It's not going to be the wishes or whims of the city itself to force something down someone's throat that doesn't want it. So, as mayor of Missoula, I believe I could keep council focused, maybe in check a little bit, but definitely in focus for the community itself.
I think I'd like to be on council when you're mayor.
You're welcome.
If I understand the question correctly, Annie, it's a question of whether the mayor would support the law. And as a council person, I've supported the law, and as a mayor, I would support the law as well.
And I guess I found the question a little confusing too. I think what is being
Would
asked.
you like me to repeat?
Well, no, I don't think that would help.
Yeah. I think.
I think what's,
It did confuse me
I think,
a lot.
I think what's being asked here is whether, because the core neighborhood was mentioned, and then, what was the other
A
term?
core neighborhood and an
Established neighborhood. Well, frankly, I think they're like one and the same. I happen to live in an established neighborhood, and it was the very thing that brought me to city council. I think the mayor has got to help council understand that when we implement policy for land use, that we create impacts. And if the impacts are degrading in any way, shape, or form, the neighborhood has to receive something in return. When you lose something that you had, you should get something back. And I think we've failed to do that. Not only that, but I would also submit that some of the policies that we've had may have violated the basic zoning protections that should have been afforded folks in their neighborhoods. And certainly I would be supportive of that. I would encourage us to come up with a master plan of where development's going to occur, what it's going to look like, so that folks know what's coming. I think the thing that most folks resent at this point is that some of this stuff has virtually been sprung on them. They didn't know about it until they heard the excavator across the street. That is not a good feeling.
I don't, can't establish a difference between a core neighborhood and an established neighborhood. I think they're basically one and the same. But I put myself into the position of somebody that bought into a neighborhood 30 years ago, understood what they thought the zoning was, and thought that the zoning was actually would control what could be developed in that neighborhood. And then to find out 20 years later, well, somebody's interpreted the law a little bit different, and the key there is interpretation. It isn't actually in what the law is. So I think there's some different opinions as to what the law actually is, and where my rights end and yours begin, or where yours end and mine start. And that's the whole question, and we're going to get that resolved fairly shortly, hopefully. I know as mayor, though, my intent is to protect the character of those core or existing neighborhoods that have been developed over the last 60 or 70 years. And I want to protect your investment when you've bought into that, so that you have some expectations and predictability as what's going to happen around you.
This whole issue of land use regulation is peppered with a variety of sometimes conflicting values and conflicting legal understandings, was pointed out. The legal issues that are in conflict will be settled in court. And I think that that's unfortunate, but the conflicts in the community, I think, are so deep and so divisive. I think that part of the reason that we're in the trouble that we are, is that the policy work that governed the situation wasn't done well. But the courts are going to sort this out for us, right or wrong. Whether it's what we want or don't want, the courts will tell us what we're going to get. So there is a legal solution to this. As mayor, I would try to guide the council away from the kinds of policy making that sets us on a trajectory that launches us into court. So that's the discussion of the legal basis. And there's also a political basis. If we don't like the work these people are doing, the voters will vote them out. And the voters will make their expression, as is provided for in our system of government, and the people who make bad decisions on our behalf won't be there.
I'm going to say I agree with everything that's been said because I'm still not quite sure what the question was. But my approach will be to be a working partner with council representatives. Having been on the council, I think moving into the mayor's position, I can appreciate the pressures that the council will be under. And I understand when the law says one thing, but you know in your conscience at times that that isn't the right thing to do. Hopefully, a lot of this conflict will get worked out ahead of time. I think one of the roles the mayor can play is bringing council people from each ward, taking them aside and saying, what are the priorities in your ward? What do you hope to accomplish? So that that becomes clear and the mayor's office can help them provide resources, help them accomplish those goals. We also have to understand that each ward fits into the overall picture of what's going on in the city. So it's a matter of stating the law, but also supporting council people when they have to make the tough decisions.
Okay. So do we have time for one more audience question? Okay. Okay. Then we will go to closing comments. Okay. So now the candidates can wrap up the evening by answering in 1 minute each, tick-tock, why will you make a good mayor for Missoula? And I guess we can start with John Engen.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry. We can have a little bit longer time. Okay, 2 minutes, all right. Okay. Phew, you can take a deep breath then. and have 2 whole minutes to say why you think you will make a good mayor for Missoula.
I had a perfect 1-minute piece ready to go. Just throwing me off.
Tell us a joke.
I'll actually, for your sake and mine, I'll try to keep it to a minute. I believe that I bring a variety of experience to the mayor's office and a spirit of public service. I've been a small business person. I've worked for a large corporation. I've volunteered sort of relentlessly in the community because I love it and I believe in service, and I believe that that's a big part of what makes this community great and what makes it work and what helps us move forward. I believe my experience on council has been not only rewarding, but I've learned a few things. I believe that I can work with a wide variety of folks. I think I'm honest and have the kind of integrity and the skill to put the right people in the right room to solve problems. I hope as your mayor I would do that every day.
Like I said earlier this evening, I didn't have a burning desire to be a politician, but I felt like in the neighborhood that I live in, some significant changes were occurring, and it was appropriate for someone to step up and represent those folks who weren't being heard in my ward. And I think I've done that. I've done that with integrity, I've done that with courage, and at times, yes, it's been entertaining, but that wasn't the goal. The goal was to really make a voice be heard for those folks that I represented. And I feel like, while it's been a privilege serving with everyone on council, including 4 of the folks that are sitting up here, I felt like a large part of what was missing in that process was a leader in the mayor's office who could have worked with council to facilitate a better outcome, to try to find the common ground that we all had, because we've had it. All 4 years we've had it. But we failed to capitalize on our strengths, and instead we continued to rehash some of the same conversations. And frankly, I don't think we've served the public as well as we could have or should have. I would hope that, given the opportunity, I can bring the knowledge and work ethic that I've had in the last 4 years to the mayor's office and to help, the next council do a better job for Missoula to guarantee a brighter future. Thank you.
I've been a homeowner in my neighborhood for 34 years, and it's been consistently in that neighborhood. I've been a small businessman and an architect for 34 years. And as an architect, I've had to deal with just about every segment of our society and every businesses, whether it's been the university, it's been medical, whether it's been legal or retail. I've had to work with people. I've had to work with people that wanted to build a house and had a dream that their house had to be just so-so and the roof had to be so steep and it had to fit all of the codes. And I've had to tell people, well, you can't do that all the time. I've also, as an architect, I've learned how to work with other professionals, and when I don't know something, I hire somebody that has the expertise to do that. But I've used my leadership skills to try to get things done, such as the Washington Grizzly Stadium, the 3 fire stations, the headquarters, and the training tower. So I've worked with those people, and I've brought successful projects and completed them. As an architect, I listen to you and your dreams. As a mayor, I will listen to the dreams and the plans and the goals of the city, and I'll use the same skills that I used in my professional business to help lead the city on to its future goals and to make the city a better place when I'm gone. Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank the League and Aging Services for sponsoring this forum and say thank you to the audience who's here and been so very attentive, and the audience at home. I hope they haven't been yelling at their TVs. No one who runs for this office does it without some self-sacrifice, and no one does it without a love of the community. I've spent lots of time with these people before you, listening to what they've said, forum after forum, and it comes through. Everyone who's sitting before you has a love of Missoula and is willing to make a sacrifice for what they believe is a job that they'll be able to help our community be better. For myself, I've demonstrated my leadership and my ability to use my vision to imagine, to work with partners, lots of different kinds of partners, and to successfully complete lots of projects, public and private, that have transformed the heart of our community, our riverfront parks and trail system. And I had a very successful career. Those are the skills that I bring to this effort. As a mayor, I will be present, I will be engaged, and I will be accountable to the citizens. I've said time and time again, the first thing I'm going to do in office is go shake the hand of the person who I think is least like me and ask the person what together we can do to make our community better, what we can do to achieve success. And eventually I'll get around to the rest of the council as well. I'm not looking to pick fights with the council, I'm looking to help. And I offer goodwill, rolled up shirt sleeves, and a readiness to get to work to get this important job underway. Thank you.
I have lived and worked in this town for almost 30 years. I came to politics through experiences that I went through in my own neighborhood. I became involved. And as a council person, after 9 years, I realized the main thing people want is to have a voice in the decisions that impact their lives. And that's what I want to do. We have a quality of life that people come here for, that people live here for 60 and 70 years. We need to work to keep that. We have a lot of challenges. But the one thing that we all have in common is this tremendous love for this city. I want to take that energy, that love, and that passion and create a community vision that we all can share, that preserves the best of what we have and prepares us for the future. Thanks for coming.
I want to thank you for the extra minute here. It'll give me a moment to, I want to let these 5 people sit up here, that we've been through all this, and I want you to know that the Missoulian was not an accurate quote today when I said none of them are decent people. I did not say that, all right? That was taken out of context.
Did you say 4 of them are decent?
No, seriously. I didn't want any of you to be offended by anything there. It's been kind of it's been a deal with the Missoulian and I that some of the things I say don't quite come out the same way they were said. But I wanted to make that very clear here. I did run because I do not agree with where we have been. I am running for mayor to look to the future and go to where we want to go as a community and not where we've been. So that is why I am here. I want you all to understand that, including all of you up here, that I don't dislike anybody, you know. I mean, I think that some of you working with you in the past would have been a wonderful thing. I really do. I've got to know these people better since we've started this process. And you know, they actually aren't as goofy as they seemed when they were downtown.
I love you too, John. You've only got 2 minutes. Go.
But anyways, as mayor of this town, I do represent the change and the policies that we will be needing to get to the future. As I say, not the past. If you're content in Missoula for the past decade or so, you're going to have some choices out there on Tuesday to vote for. But if you're actually not content with the way it's been going, then you only have one choice on Tuesday, and that's me. So I really want you to do this. I want you to get out and tell everybody to vote. That's the most important thing of all of this, involvement. Thank you. Thank you all for coming and having someone like me in front of you.
Well, at this time, I would like to thank all of the candidates for being willing to come again to face the community and answer questions. The purpose of the forum was to help people understand the issues in the community and to give them the information they need to make an informed choice on Tuesday. I also would like to take this opportunity to give thanks to all the volunteers who have participated in putting on this forum, taking their time and being willing to work with us on this. So thank you all. I want to remind you that this is all going to come to a head on Tuesday. I urge you to vote in the primary that will be on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, the 13th of September. Also, in ending, I will remind people that the League of Women Voters, whose whole purpose of being existing is to help people get information and be informed citizens. And on Monday, on the second Monday of each month, we hold a meeting, a luncheon, a brown bag luncheon, and to which all people are invited. It's open to the public, and the one that's coming up on Monday is going to be about the Patriot Act and the changes in the Patriot Act. And anyone is invited to come, and it will be at the public library at 11:45. So if you would like to continue educating yourself about some of the issues, you're welcome to come. So thank you all for coming. Good night.